No one in Sage Creek could have predicted the chaos that would seize the quiet town before sunrise. The first sign that something was wrong came at 5:16 a.m. when a single piercing scream ripped through the stillness. At first, people thought it was an animal, maybe a fox or a barn cat fighting in the alley. But when the neighbors stepped out onto their porches, clutching coffee mugs and rubbing their eyes, they saw Abigail Foster in her nightgown, standing barefoot on her front lawn. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. Her husband, Tom, sprinted back and forth across their yard, frantically calling out a single name: Lily. By the time the sun crested over the blue-gray hills, word had spread like wildfire. Lily Foster, only 7 years old, had vanished from her bed. Her small window was shattered, glass scattered across her pink bedspread and onto the floor. Her stuffed unicorn, Mr. Sprinkles, lay abandoned next to the sill, one button eye staring out into the yard. The police arrived within minutes, blue lights flashing against the early morning haze. Cars lined the curb. Curious neighbors, some still in pajamas, huddled together in tight, anxious groups. The mood was electric: fear, disbelief, and the first taste of anger. Officer Sarah Jennings was one of the first on the scene. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her belt and approached the Fosters. She'd grown up in Sage Creek, knew nearly everyone in town by first name, but she'd never faced a case like this before. The look in Abigail's eyes, wild, haunted, almost accusatory, made Sarah's heart race. "She was just here," Abigail whispered, as Sarah gently guided her to sit on the porch steps. "We tucked her in at 9. She wanted me to sing that silly horse song again. You know the one? She was fine, she was happy," Tom interrupted, his voice cracking. "Did you check the woods? She loves to hide there. Maybe she got scared after the window." Sarah crouched beside them, forcing herself to sound calm, even though her mind was whirling. "We're searching everywhere, I promise. The whole department is coming in." "Abigail, can you remember? Did you see or hear anything strange last night?" Abigail shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Nothing. Just the storm. There was thunder, I think. Maybe that's when No, she wouldn't leave in a storm. She hates thunder." She broke down, burying her face in her hands. By now the street was crowded. Friends, neighbors, even local shop owners left their stores unlocked to join the growing crowd. Sarah saw Mrs. Geller from the bakery handing out blankets and cups of hot cocoa, trying to keep the shivering parents and children calm. Mr. Diaz, the mechanic, was already organizing a group of men to search the woods at the edge of town. Even the mayor showed up, shaking hands and making urgent phone calls, his tie askew. But it was chaos. People yelled over each other, everyone desperate to help but no one sure what to do. Some neighbors started shouting out theories. Maybe Lily had run away. Maybe someone in town had seen something. Maybe, God forbid, this was the work of the stranger who'd been spotted last week at the gas station, the one with the battered pickup and the distant eyes. Sarah did her best to cut through the noise. She flashed her badge, raised her voice, tried to direct the search parties. "No one goes into the woods alone. Pair up. Stay in radio contact. If you find anything at all, call me or the station immediately." Her voice rang out, strong and clear, but inside she was scared. She'd always imagined herself ready for anything, but now that it was real, now that a little girl's life was on the line, every decision felt like a test she couldn't afford to fail. The forensics team moved through Lily's bedroom with careful precision, dusting for prints, collecting scraps of fabric, photographing the broken glass and the muddy footprint just outside the window. Sarah watched them, gnawing her lip. The print was small, maybe a woman's shoe, maybe a teenager's. No one could say for sure yet. But Sarah noticed something else. A faint smell of horses, straw, and sweat drifting from the open window. She glanced toward the neighboring fields, where the town's only riding stable sat just beyond the tree line. A sharp voice snapped her attention back to the yard. It was Tom, arguing with the sheriff, his face red and furious. "You're not moving fast enough! That's my daughter! Why aren't you doing something? Why aren't you searching the barns, the river, the old mine?" Sheriff Grant, an older man with a gruff beard and tired eyes, put a firm hand on Tom's shoulder. "We're on it, Tom. I swear. We'll find her." Sarah stepped in, locking eyes with Lily's parents. She spoke quietly, but with all the conviction she could muster. "I promise you, we won't stop until Lily is home. I'll do everything in my power, I swear it." A heavy silence fell as everyone watched her, searching her face for the confidence they desperately needed. And in that moment, Sarah felt the weight of the entire town pressing down on her. Somewhere out in the woods or hidden in the shadows, Lily needed her. There was no turning back now. And so, as the sun climbed higher and the first search parties fanned out across the fields, Sarah knew this would be the longest day Sage Creek had ever faced. And for her, it was just the beginning. Time became the enemy as the minutes dragged on. In Sage Creek, the sun fell fast behind the western ridges, painting the sky in streaks of blood red and gold. Sarah Jennings watched the light fade from the treetops with a gnawing sense of dread. Every shadow seemed to grow longer. Every minute lost felt like a lifetime. In missing child cases, she knew, every hour mattered. Lily's chances shrank as the daylight did. Dozens of volunteers streamed in from neighboring farms and distant houses. Pickups and SUVs parked in a crooked line down Main Street, their headlights throwing stark beams through the gathering dusk. Sarah moved among the crowd, clipboard in hand, trying to bring order to the chaos. She checked in names, assigned search sectors, repeated instructions. Stay together, check every outbuilding, call out Lily's name, listen for anything, even the faintest cry. In the flurry, someone brought in 2 police dogs from the next county, a pair of sleek German shepherds with sharp eyes and keener noses. But the ground around the Foster house was already trampled by boots and sneakers, the air muddled with sweat, engine exhaust, and the sweet, heavy scent of blooming wildflowers. The dogs sniffed and circled, whining in confusion, picking up too many scents at once. Sarah's mind spun, reviewing every protocol she'd ever learned. A flash of memory, the sheriff's words at the academy, his voice gravelly and firm. "Don't let panic push you. Think, use your head." But thinking was getting harder as hope ebbed and exhaustion crept in. She was haunted by the image of Lily's empty bed, the broken window, Abigail's desperate face. By now, the search parties were spreading thin. Some neighbors grew impatient and broke off from the main groups, convinced they knew where Lily might be. By the riverbank, or the old schoolhouse, or maybe hiding near the railroad tracks. Sarah tried to rein them in, but worry made people reckless. As the clock edged closer to 6, a low, urgent voice called her over the radio. It was Deputy Quinn, his tone tense. "Sarah, we can't get the ATVs up into the North Ridge. Rocks everywhere. We're losing light fast. What's the plan?" Sarah pinched the bridge of her nose, feeling sweat bead on her forehead. The North Ridge was a mess of tangled roots, loose shale, and thorny brush. ATVs would tip or get stuck, and even the dogs struggled with the steep, uneven ground. She glanced back at the stables in the distance, the one place no one had really considered yet. Suddenly, it hit her. Storm. In Sage Creek, everyone knew about Storm. The big brown gelding was half legend, half mystery, powerful, smart, almost too calm in chaos. He belonged to Old Man Peterson, who swore the horse could find his way home blindfolded. Some kids said Storm could sense trouble before it happened. Sarah had worked with him once, years back, after a flash flood when they'd found a lost hiker just before nightfall. That day, she'd learned to trust Storm more than her own instincts. She turned on her heel and jogged toward the Peterson barn. The doors were open, golden light spilling out, as Mr. Peterson himself brushed down Storm's glossy coat. "Officer Jennings," he called, eyebrows rising. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Sarah caught her breath, looking Storm in the eye. The horse flicked an ear, alert and steady. "He's the only way into the ridge," she said quietly. "ATVs can't make it, and we're losing the trail." Mr. Peterson gave a sharp nod. "You ride him better than I do now. Take him. Bring that girl home." Sarah saddled Storm with practiced hands, her fingers moving quickly, not daring to let herself hesitate. She pulled on the bridle, checked the cinch twice, and swung herself up. The barn's other horses watched, restless, but Storm stood like a statue, eyes bright, nostrils flaring. A hush fell as Sarah rode out into the dying light. People turned, voices trailing off as they watched her guide Storm to the edge of the fields. The crowd parted, hope flickering in their eyes. One last chance, one last hope before night swallowed everything. Sarah paused at the tree line, feeling the magnitude of the moment. She could hear snippets of conversation behind her, Abigail's voice trembling. "Please bring her back!" The sheriff barking orders, someone sobbing quietly. She steeled herself, tightening her grip on the reins. Storm pawed the ground, sensing her tension. She leaned down, whispering into his ear, "We need you tonight, buddy. Let's go find Lily." With a powerful surge, Storm plunged forward, his hooves eating up the ground as they disappeared into the undergrowth. Sarah's heart pounded as branches whipped past her face, the wind tearing at her hair. She kept low, trusting Storm's balance and strength. Inside the woods, the world changed. The fading sunlight barely filtered through the dense canopy, casting everything in a dim green twilight. The sounds of the town fell away, replaced by the rush of wind, the call of a distant owl, the thump of Storm's hooves. Sarah scanned the ground, searching for anything, a scrap of pink fabric, a footprint, a broken branch. Every shadow looked suspicious, every flicker of movement a possible clue. Storm moved with uncanny certainty, picking his way over rocks, through brambles, never hesitating even as the trail vanished. Sarah let him lead, trusting his instincts as much as her own. Occasionally, she called out Lily's name, her voice echoing through the silent woods. Once she thought she heard a distant rustle, but it was only a squirrel darting up a tree. As they pressed deeper, Sarah's mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Was Lily alone, scared, cold? Was someone out there with her? Someone dangerous? The urgency in her chest grew sharper, heavier with every passing minute. Back in town, the searchers watched the darkness grow, their hope dimming with the sun. But for Sarah, there was no turning back. She was riding straight into the unknown, trusting a horse and her own resolve against the gathering night. Somewhere, hidden in the vast, tangled forest, Lily was waiting, and Sarah Jennings was determined not to let her down. Not tonight, not ever. Deep inside the ancient woods, Sarah Jennings slowed Storm to a careful walk, the adrenaline of the ride replaced by a trembling quiet. The sounds of town, the shouting, the engines, even the distant siren, faded away behind her, swallowed up by the hush of leaves and the soft, secret language of the forest. Only the rhythmic creak of leather and the thud of Storm's hooves broke the silence. Here, under the heavy canopy, dusk had already fallen, shadows pooling at the bases of thick pines and tangled undergrowth. Sarah had always known these woods as a child, the trails where she'd picked blackberries, the mossy rocks where she'd watched salamanders dart, the hollow log that became a pirate ship or a secret base on long summer afternoons. But tonight, the familiar became strange. Every twisted root or broken branch seemed ominous, every hollow a potential hiding place. She had to fight the urge to call out, to let panic make her clumsy. Instead, she remembered her training. Slow, careful, listen more than you speak. Out here, patience was as important as bravery. Storm seemed to know. The big gelding moved with an eerie confidence, ears swiveling at every faint sound. An owl's hoot, a distant cracking branch, the whisper of wind. Sarah loosened her grip on the reins, giving Storm his head, letting him choose the path. She kept her eyes low, searching for the small clues others might have missed. A footprint in the soft dirt, a broken fern, the glimmer of something out of place. She whispered Lily's name, just once, her voice barely more than breath. The woods answered with silence. Sarah swallowed hard, forcing herself to focus. Trust the horse, she told herself, remembering that flood years ago. How Storm had found a path no person would have dared. She reached down, patting his neck. It's all you now, buddy. Storm paused near a fallen birch, nostrils flaring. Sarah leaned forward, trying to see what he sensed. A rabbit bolted from the brush, heart hammering, but Storm barely flinched. He waited, then stepped forward, ears still swiveling, picking up scents and sounds Sarah could not. The forest was a world apart from the chaos she'd left behind, and now, with only the horse for company, Sarah felt something unfamiliar, a fragile hope, delicate as a spiderweb in dew. 100 yards on, Sarah spotted a boot print, small, maybe a child's, pressed deep in the mud by the creek. Her own heart skipped. She slipped from Storm's back, careful not to startle him, and crouched low, inspecting the ground. The print was fresh, the edges still sharp. Above it, a set of larger prints, staggered and deeper. The two sets wound between saplings and vanished into the shadows. Sarah radioed in the discovery, keeping her voice low. Possible track, Creekside, North Ridge. Continuing search, moving east. Static replied. Maybe the signal was lost. Maybe the team was too far behind. Either way, she didn't wait. There was no time for hesitation. She led Storm along the edge of the creek, eyes darting from the prints to the trees, every sense on high alert. Storm's head was high, ears pricked, as if he was searching too. At times he'd stop, sniff the wind, then nudge Sarah to move left or right. She let him guide her, reading his subtle cues, a swish of the tail, a pause to listen, a sudden stiffening as he caught something she couldn't sense. The undergrowth thickened, clawing at Sarah's uniform, grabbing at her boots. The forest floor sloped downward, the soil slick with old rain. She stumbled once, catching herself on Storm's saddle. The horse waited, patient, his breath warm and steady against her arm. In the dense quiet, Sarah's mind started to play tricks. Shadows seemed to move, a branch looked like a reaching hand. Every crunch of leaf could be footsteps. She forced herself to breathe, to focus. One thing at a time, she thought. Follow the horse, trust the signs. A sudden crack echoed to her right. Too sharp, too sudden for a squirrel. She froze, pressing close to Storm, every muscle tense. The horse stilled, nostrils wide but didn't bolt. Sarah waited, heart pounding, listening. A few seconds later, she heard a soft whimper, so faint she wasn't sure it was real. She glanced at Storm. He was staring at a thicket up ahead, muscles bunched as if ready to charge or bolt. Sarah swallowed, creeping closer, every footstep careful. She called out quietly but firmly, "Lily?" Lily, is that you? Silence. Then a whisper, a breath, a tiny sob, quickly muffled. Sarah's pulse jumped. She motioned Storm to stay back and crept forward, eyes wide, every sense straining. The thicket rustled, but nothing emerged. Sarah stepped into a small clearing, pausing to let her eyes adjust. On the far side, a small piece of pink fabric fluttered on a low branch. She inched forward, careful not to spook whoever or whatever might be near. Storm watched from behind, tense but silent, as if sensing the fragile balance of the moment. The clearing felt heavy, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Sarah waited, searching every shadow, willing herself to move slow, not to rush the moment. She wanted to run, to shout, to tear through the brush, but she knew better. Panic would help no one. Minutes ticked by. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of wet earth, horses, and something else. Fear, perhaps, or hope. Sarah straightened, listening with every part of her body, letting Storm's instincts guide her. The woods were alive, not with menace but with possibility. Somewhere ahead, Lily might be waiting. Somewhere close, a clue or a sign was waiting to be found. Sarah let herself hope. Not because the evidence was overwhelming, but because hope was all she had left. In the quiet, in the calm, she whispered again, "We'll find you, Lily. I promise." Storm's ears twitched, and together they pressed forward, deeper into the heart of the forest, ready for whatever came next. The forest had grown so thick now that only shreds of moonlight made it through the tangled branches. Sarah moved slowly, one hand brushing the bristly mane of Storm, her boots making almost no sound in the soft, spongy moss. The deeper she pressed, the more she had to rely on Storm's senses, feeling the horse pause at every fork, sniff the air, then guide them further into the dense undergrowth. Each step felt both promising and perilous, the dark swallowing up the little reassurance Sarah had left. It was then, rounding a patch of wild briars, that Storm suddenly stopped. The horse let out a low, uncertain snort, his body tense and alert. Sarah followed his gaze and saw a spot of color, a flash of pink, almost glowing in the gloom. Her heart leapt as she hurried over, fighting through the thorny branches that tore at her sleeves and scratched her arms. There, snagged cruelly on a cluster of thorns, fluttered a strip of fabric, a piece of cloth torn from Lily's pajama shirt, still vivid with the little cartoon horses Abigail had sewn herself. Sarah's hands shook as she freed the cloth. The edges were ragged, stained with mud and speckled with dew. She pressed it to her chest for a brief second, the tangible proof that Lily had come this way. It was more than a clue. It was hope, real and immediate, as sharp and clear as the cold night air. With trembling fingers, she reached for her radio. Her voice was steady, but her breath shook as she spoke. "I found a piece of Lily's shirt. North Ridge, about a mile in from the creek crossing, marking the spot now." The radio crackled, faint voices replying, but Sarah knew backup was still far off. There wasn't time to wait. The terrain was too rough, and every moment mattered. She tied a strip of neon survey tape to the nearest branch, then reached for Storm's reins. The horse was quivering now, ears up, his gaze fixed on something deeper in the woods. Sarah felt the old fear creep back in. What if she was too late? What if Lily was hurt? What if the person who'd taken her was still nearby? But she didn't let herself stop. She knelt in the dirt, searching for more clues, a small scuff in the moss, a heel print in the mud, a snapped twig bending under invisible weight. As she pieced together the trail, Sarah's resolve hardened. This was no accident, no innocent wandering off. The clues were clear. Lily had been moving quickly, sometimes dragged, sometimes running. The brush was trampled in places, broken twigs at odd angles, as if someone much larger had forced a way through the thicket. Sarah looked back at Storm, who waited patiently, his big eyes soft in the half-light. She pressed her forehead to his and whispered, "You ready to keep going, buddy?" Storm flicked his tail and nudged her shoulder, almost as if to say, "Let's move." They pressed on, and Sarah's confidence in Storm grew with every step. When she hesitated, Storm would move forward, sniffing the ground, stopping to listen, alert to every shift in the air. At one point, the horse veered sharply to the left, avoiding a bramble patch, and Sarah saw the faint glimmer of another clue. A small plastic barrette, the kind Lily wore lying half-buried in the loam. It was pink with tiny rhinestones, the kind of thing that could have slipped from a panicked child's hair. Sarah picked it up gently and slid it into her pocket. Every piece mattered. Every small sign was another reason not to give in to despair. She imagined Lily's parents waiting back at the house, Abigail clutching her phone, Tom pacing the porch, their hope flickering with every hour that passed. She couldn't let them down. The woods grew quieter as the night deepened, every sound amplified by the hush, the sigh of wind through pine needles, the snap of a distant branch, the low call of a barred owl. Sarah tried the radio again. Still on the trail, following fresh signs, moving northeast, but got only static in reply. It didn't matter. She knew she had to keep moving. Suddenly, Storm stopped again, body rigid. He pawed at the earth, nostrils flaring, and Sarah saw that the trail forked in two directions. She crouched low, holding the strip of Lily's shirt in her hand. "Which way, Storm?" she whispered. The horse turned to the right, and as Sarah studied the ground, she spotted another print, this one much clearer than before. It was small, unmistakably a child's, pressed deep into the muddy earth. Sarah's heart squeezed. "She's close," she murmured, hope and dread mingling in her chest. For the next 20 minutes, they moved in silence, Storm picking up the pace as if he sensed the urgency. The underbrush thinned, the trees growing taller and older, their roots twisting across the ground. Sarah could feel her nerves stretching tight, every sense focused, every doubt pushed aside by the need to act. She found herself talking to Storm in low, soothing tones, half to comfort him, half to steady herself. "You're doing great, boy. We're almost there. Just a little further." When the moon broke free of the clouds for a moment, it painted the path ahead in silver. Sarah could see where someone had stumbled, marks in the dirt, bent ferns, a half-crushed wildflower. The signs were adding up, guiding her like stepping stones across a river. For the first time since this nightmare began, Sarah allowed herself to believe they would find Lily. She could almost hear the girl's laughter echoing through the trees, almost see her darting between the trunks in her pink pajamas, bright and alive. That hope became a fire in Sarah's chest, burning away the fear, pushing her onward. Storm gave a low nicker, and Sarah squeezed his shoulder. "Let's go, Storm. Let's bring her home." They vanished deeper into the woods, hope their only light, but stronger now, because every clue, every instinct, every step was leading them closer to the missing child. The woods seemed to close in around Sarah and Storm as they pressed deeper into the heart of the ridge. The wind had died down, leaving the night air heavy and almost suffocating. It was as if the whole world was holding its breath. The last trace of moonlight disappeared behind thick clouds, and Sarah relied on the faint beam from her flashlight, sweeping it low across the uneven ground. Each step forward was a mix of hope and dread, knowing they were drawing closer to whoever had taken Lily, and whatever might happen next. Sarah glanced back just once, catching the distant glimmer of search party lanterns scattered far behind, too far to help now. Static crackled in her radio, no voices, no updates, just an empty hiss. She could not count on backup. She could only count on herself, her training, and the remarkable animal beside her. Storm's ears flicked constantly, every muscle in his body tense. Sarah could feel his nervous energy through the reins, but she trusted him, whispering, "Easy, boy. I'm right here with you." The clues had become unmistakable now. The ground was churned, the footprints muddier, more hurried. Sometimes they were two sets, one big, heavy, deep in the mud, dragging through the brush, the other small and erratic, as if a child had tried to break free and run. Sarah's heart hammered. The images in her mind, Lily stumbling, someone grabbing her arm, fear and confusion, drove her on. At a narrow ravine, Storm stopped abruptly. Sarah swung her flashlight ahead and spotted a tattered scarf snagged on a low branch. She recognized it from a photo Abigail had shown her in the living room, white with tiny red hearts, Lily's favorite. Sarah pocketed the scarf, steeling herself, every nerve ending on fire. Suddenly, a distant sound, branches snapping, quick footsteps, echoed through the trees. Sarah froze, signaling Storm to be still. Her own breath was ragged in her ears. Someone was moving fast, not far ahead. She strained to listen. The footsteps faded, replaced by the hush of the forest. But they left a trail, a line of fresh boot prints through the mud, trampling everything in their path. Sarah's mind raced. Should she call out? Wait for help? Her training screamed at her to pause, to coordinate, to stay safe. But her instincts, and the growing fear for Lily's safety, demanded action. If she waited, the trail would vanish into darkness. If she pressed on, she risked walking straight into danger. She crouched low beside Storm, weighing her options. This wasn't a textbook case. This was real. The woods were thick and wild, full of hiding places. There were stories in Sage Creek about these hills. Old miners lost for days, hunters who vanished, legends of things best left alone. Sarah shoved the superstitions aside. There was a real child out there, scared and alone, and she wouldn't let anything stop her. She checked her flashlight, tightened her grip on the radio, and looked Storm in the eye. The horse gave a little nod, as if he understood what was coming next. "Let's do this," Sarah whispered. They pressed on, moving more carefully than ever. Sarah ducked under low branches, her clothes catching on thorns, every muscle burning from hours in the saddle and on foot. Storm picked his way behind her, surprisingly quiet for his size, following the trail as if it was written in bold letters. Once he stopped and sniffed at a patch of ground, then snorted and pawed the dirt, a sign that something had passed through recently. As they pushed through a thicket, Sarah saw a glint of metal, a crushed soda can, fresh mud smeared on its side. Trash, maybe, but it felt out of place in these deep woods. Someone had been here, and not long ago. Sarah's internal debate raged. Should she go back, get help, regroup with the others? She knew the risks of continuing alone, but every instinct screamed at her not to stop. She imagined the fear in Lily's eyes, the helplessness in her parents' voices. She remembered her promise. "We won't stop until Lily is home." She kept moving. The terrain got rougher, steep slopes, loose rocks, fallen branches. Sarah almost lost her footing, but caught herself on a low tree limb. Storm hesitated, then pressed on, more sure-footed than any machine. The trees thinned for a moment, revealing a rocky outcrop overlooking a narrow valley. Down below, Sarah caught the faintest glimmer. Was that a light? She killed her own flashlight and waited, peering into the dark. There it was again. A tiny orange flicker. The unmistakable pulse of a campfire. Her pulse raced. She crouched behind a boulder, pulling Storm close and running her hands along his neck to calm him. This had to be it. Someone was camped out there. Someone who didn't want to be found. Sarah's mind reeled with scenarios. Armed kidnapper, desperate escape, a standoff in the dark. She radioed in a quick update just in case. Possible location. Sighted campfire in ravine. Moving to investigate. Over. The only answer was static. For a moment, Sarah hesitated, fighting the urge to turn back. But then she heard something that wiped out every doubt, a tiny, muffled sob carried on the night wind. Lily's voice raw with fear and exhaustion. That was all she needed. Sarah drew a deep breath, checked her sidearm, and whispered to Storm, "Stay here, buddy. I need you quiet now." Storm shifted, muscles rippling, eyes locked on her every move. Sarah slipped from cover, creeping toward the fire, every sense stretched to the breaking point. She knew this was it, the moment where everything would change for Lily, for herself, for the whole town. Somewhere ahead, in the circle of firelight, the truth waited, and Sarah would meet it, whatever the cost. The crackle of fire in the night sounded unnatural, almost menacing in the stillness of the forest. Sarah crouched low behind a mossy log, every muscle taut, every sense sharpened by adrenaline. She had tethered Storm in the shadows of the trees, trusting him to wait. His steady presence was both comfort and reminder of how far they'd come. The campfire ahead flickered, shadows dancing wildly against the jagged rock wall and tangled branches that formed a makeshift shelter. Sarah's hand moved to the grip of her flashlight, but she kept it off, not wanting to give away her position. She had no idea what or who waited beyond the orange glow. The woods were silent except for the pop of burning pine, the distant creak of trees in the wind, and then, a sound so fragile she almost missed it, a tiny, frightened whimper. She froze, heart pounding. There it was again, a muffled cry, unmistakably a child's. "Lily!" For a second, Sarah's training warred with the raw urge to run forward, to scoop the girl up and carry her away from all this darkness. But she stayed low, forcing herself to observe, to listen. Through the firelight, Sarah saw a hunched figure pacing just beyond the flames. He was tall and thin, wrapped in a dark jacket, his face hidden by the brim of a hat pulled low. His movements were frantic, unpredictable. He'd pace to the edge of the clearing, glance into the shadows, then rush back to the fire as if afraid of the dark. Every few minutes, he would kneel by a bundle of blankets on the far side of the camp, muttering something Sarah couldn't hear. Sarah's blood turned to ice as she saw a small hand appear from beneath the blankets, fingers trembling in the cold. It was Lily, her hair tangled, cheeks streaked with tears, eyes huge and searching in the firelight. The child whimpered, flinched as the man barked at her, then curled tighter into herself. Sarah gritted her teeth. Every second she waited felt like an eternity, but she had to be sure she understood the situation. There could be weapons, booby traps, other dangers lurking just out of sight. The man started rummaging through a dirty backpack, cursing under his breath. His back was to Lily now, and for a split second she lifted her head, staring directly into the woods. Sarah met her eyes, wide, pleading, desperate. Sarah pressed a finger to her lips, then pointed gently downward, signaling Lily to stay quiet. The child nodded, hope sparking faintly in her face. Sarah surveyed the clearing, looking for ways in and out, possible places for backup to approach if they arrived. But she knew the reality. The radio was useless, and the searchers were scattered miles away. It was up to her. She drew in a shaky breath, letting her training take over. Slow, silent, smart, she told herself. The night pressed close, and she moved as quietly as she could, circling the clearing to come at the camp from the side. Each step was measured, deliberate. A stick snapped beneath her boot, and the man's head whipped around, suspicion in his eyes. Sarah ducked, breath caught in her throat. He stared into the darkness, muttering, "Damn coyotes." He went back to his fire, tossing more sticks on the flames. Sarah used the distraction to slide closer, pushing through low bushes that scraped her hands raw. She paused just 10 yards away, close enough to see the dirt under the man's nails, the wild look in his eyes. He was younger than she'd first thought, maybe late 20s, face hollow from worry or hunger. Lily whimpered again, louder this time. The man spun on her, voice harsh. "Shut up. I told you, you're not going anywhere. Your parents, the cops, they're not coming. Nobody's coming for you." He grabbed her arm, shaking her once. Lily sobbed, pulling away. That was enough. Sarah's voice rang out, firm and commanding. "Let her go, now!" The man jerked, shock and fear twisting his features. For a moment he froze, then his hand darted into his backpack, searching for something, a weapon, or perhaps just to run. Sarah stepped fully into the firelight, gun drawn, badge shining in the flickering orange glow. "I said drop it. Step away from the child." For a few tense seconds, everything hung in the balance. The fire crackled, Lily's breath hitched in the cold, and the man's eyes darted between Sarah, the woods, and the path behind him. He started to bolt, but Sarah shifted, blocking his escape. "Don't even think about it. Put your hands where I can see them. It's over." But panic overtook reason. The man lunged for the shadows, shoving Sarah as he passed. She stumbled but recovered quickly, her boots sliding on the loose dirt. The man crashed through the brush, wild and desperate. But a new sound shattered the chaos. A deep, rolling neigh. Storm. The horse, sensing the danger, broke free from his tether. He galloped into the clearing, massive and unstoppable, rearing up between the fleeing man and the dark woods. The man faltered, eyes wide, and tumbled backward, skidding to a halt just feet from Storm's powerful hooves. Sarah seized the moment. She dashed to Lily, scooping the trembling girl into her arms. "It's okay, Lily. I'm here. You're safe now." The child clung to her, sobbing into her shoulder. Sarah called out again. "Stay down. It's over." The man, breathless and defeated, sat in the dirt, arms raised, staring at the horse with something like awe or fear. As Sarah held Lily close, relief flooded through her, mixing with adrenaline and exhaustion. She glanced at Storm, who stood guard, proud and still in the firelight. They had found her. Against all odds, they had found her. But the night was far from over. Sarah kept her senses sharp, knowing she still had to get Lily home, still had to keep everyone safe. Yet for the first time since the nightmare began, hope felt real, a light blazing in the darkness, a promise that they could make it out together. The world seemed to hold its breath as Sarah clung to Lily, the firelight painting both their faces in trembling shadows. The man who had taken her hovered at the edge of the camp, wild-eyed, fists clenched at his sides. For a second, time felt suspended. No sound but the pop and crackle of burning wood. No movement but Lily's silent tears wetting Sarah's shoulder. Every instinct screamed that danger was still close, that escape or violence could happen in a blink. Sarah's training sharpened her focus. She scanned the clearing, saw the kidnapper's gaze flick from her to the trail, then to Storm, who now stood between the man and the only open path out of the woods. The horse was a silhouette of muscle and calm power, head high, hooves planted in the earth as if he dared anyone to cross him. The kidnapper hesitated, breath ragged, desperate. "Stay back!" he shouted, voice cracking as he yanked a battered hunting knife from his coat. His hand shook, sweat glinting on his forehead in the fire's glow. He glared at Sarah, but there was a glimmer of something else in his eyes. Uncertainty. Maybe even regret. Sarah kept her gun pointed at him, her other arm wrapped tightly around Lily, voice steady. "Don't do this. It's over. No one else needs to get hurt. Drop the knife and get on your knees." But the man took a trembling step toward the edge, calculating his chances. His eyes darted to Storm. Surely he didn't expect the horse to react. He took one more step. Storm didn't move. Muscles coiled beneath his gleaming coat. Ears laid back, tail lashing with tension. The kidnapper lunged, hoping to dart around the massive gelding. In an instant, Storm reared up, hooves flashing in the firelight, letting out a sound that echoed like thunder through the clearing. A primal, protective scream. The man froze, terror written plain on his face. Storm dropped his front hooves, blocking the narrow path, then surged forward with a powerful stomp that sent dirt and leaves flying. The kidnapper stumbled, lost his balance, and fell hard on the rocky ground. His knife skittered into the shadows. Sarah wasted no time. She pressed Lily close and dashed to the side, putting her own body between the child and danger. "Lily, stay down. Cover your head," she whispered, adrenaline burning through her veins. The kidnapper scrambled to his knees, eyes wide with fear as Storm snorted and pawed the ground, daring him to move. Sarah leveled her weapon again. "It's done. Lie flat and put your hands behind your head. Do it now!" Trembling, beaten, the man finally obeyed, dropping to his stomach and lacing his hands behind his head. Storm stood over him, a living wall of muscle and resolve. Sarah radioed in, voice steady despite her racing pulse. "Suspect subdued. Child is safe. Need immediate backup and medics at my location. Over." Only static replied, but she didn't care. She had Lily, and the danger was contained, at least for the moment. Sarah rushed back to Lily, who was sobbing quietly in the grass. She knelt, cupped the girl's cheeks in her hands, and looked her straight in the eyes. "Lily, you're safe now. You did everything right. I need you to be brave just a little bit longer, okay?" Lily nodded, still shaking, but there was a new flicker of hope in her gaze. Sarah hugged her close, tears burning behind her eyes. "You're so strong, kiddo. We're going to get you home, I promise." A low whinny made Sarah look up. Storm stepped toward them, lowering his massive head until his nose nearly touched Lily's tangled hair. The little girl blinked up, awestruck, and managed the smallest, bravest smile. Is he our hero horse?" Sarah nodded, stroking Storm's neck. "Yeah, he's the bravest horse in all of Sage Creek. He kept us safe." Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, the faintest echo of hope winding through the forest. Help was coming at last. Sarah scanned the edge of the woods, checking for any new threat, but for now the night was quiet. Only the fire, the steady breath of Storm, and the heartbeat of a town holding on to hope. The kidnapper moaned from the ground, not daring to move as Storm continued to guard him. Sarah kept one eye on the man and one on Lily. She checked the girl for injuries, some scrapes, bruises, but no broken bones. She found a blanket in the abandoned camp, wrapped it around Lily's small shoulders, and led her to Storm. "Think you're up for a ride?" she asked, kneeling beside Lily. The girl's eyes widened. "On the hero horse?" Sarah smiled, voice gentle. "Yeah, he'll keep us safe all the way home." She lifted Lily into the saddle, then swung up behind her, wrapping both arms around her and the reins. Storm waited for their signal, ears flicking back as if listening for trouble. Before they left, Sarah turned one last time to the kidnapper. "Lie still. The sheriff's coming. If you run, you'll have to get past him." She nodded at Storm, who snorted as if in agreement. With Lily pressed close and Storm guiding them, Sarah rode out of the firelight, away from the broken pieces of the nightmare. The ride back would not be easy, dark, rough, and haunted by everything that had happened. But now, hope rode with them, strong and unyielding. As they moved through the woods, Lily leaned back into Sarah's arms. Her tiny voice broke the silence. "I was so scared." Sarah squeezed her gently, her own voice soft. "Me too, sweetheart. But you're safe now, and you're never going to be alone again." Storm carried them through the darkness, his steady steps echoing the promise in Sarah's heart, that no matter what came next, they would find their way home, together. The woods felt different now. Sarah sat astride Storm with Lily clutched in her arms, the darkness no longer menacing, but full of the promise of safety and relief. Each step Storm took seemed steadier than the last, as if the horse knew he was guiding precious cargo. The adrenaline of the rescue still hummed in Sarah's veins, but beneath it ran a deep, overwhelming gratitude. Lily was alive, she was safe, and their nightmare was finally ending. Sarah wrapped her jacket around Lily's shivering shoulders and spoke softly into her ear. "You did so well, Lily. We're almost home now. Everyone's waiting for you." Lily, exhausted and tear-streaked, clung to Sarah's arm and nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Will Mommy be there?" Sarah pressed a kiss to the girl's head. "She's waiting for you, and your dad too. They haven't left the porch all night." Storm picked his way through the undergrowth with careful confidence, his head high, ears swiveling at every distant noise. Sarah marveled at his focus. Even after the chaos of the confrontation, Storm had not faltered. He seemed to understand that his job wasn't finished until Lily was home, safe in her parents' arms. The return journey felt both endless and far too quick. The moon shone fitfully through the treetops, lighting their path in silver. Sarah guided Storm along the trail they had forged, retracing the clues she'd followed in desperation only hours earlier. Now, every snapped branch and muddy footprint seemed like a memory from another life. At one point, Lily began to cry softly. Sarah pulled her closer, speaking gentle reassurances. "It's okay now, Lily. You're safe, I promise. Nothing bad is going to happen to you again." Storm snorted as if to agree, and Lily reached out with one tiny hand to grip his mane, burying her face against the horse's neck. "Thank you, Storm," she murmured, her voice trembling but grateful. After what felt like an eternity, the forest began to thin. The lights of Sage Creek flickered in the distance, growing brighter as they neared the edge of the woods. A hush seemed to fall over the town. Every porch light was on, every window glowing with anxious anticipation. Word had spread quickly. The search parties had returned to town, desperate and exhausted, refusing to give up hope. As Sarah, Lily, and Storm emerged from the tree line, a wave of noise greeted them. Cheers, sobs, and shouts of relief echoed across the fields as townspeople ran to meet them. Flashlights bobbed through the dark, and Sarah could see Tom and Abigail Foster pushing through the crowd, their faces etched with fear, hope, and disbelief. Sarah slid down from the saddle, catching Lily in her arms and setting her gently on the ground. The little girl swayed, knees weak, but then she saw her parents and let out a cry that split the night. "Mommy! Daddy!" Tom reached them first, dropping to his knees to scoop Lily into his arms. Abigail was only a step behind, tears streaming down her cheeks as she clung to her daughter, kissing her face again and again. Sarah stood back, breathless, her own eyes burning. The crowd pressed in, but for a moment, the Fosters were in their own world, wrapped in the safety of family. Then the others surged forward, offering blankets, water, gentle words. Sheriff Grant pushed through, resting a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You did good, Jennings," he said, voice thick. "You brought her home." Sarah could only nod, emotion too strong to speak. She turned to Storm, who stood quietly amidst the chaos, as if sensing the magnitude of the moment. Children and adults alike crowded around the big brown horse, stroking his flanks and murmuring thanks. Lily, still nestled in her parents' embrace, reached out to hug Storm's neck, burying her face in his mane. "You're my hero," she whispered. It was a scene the town would talk about for years. A battered police officer, a brave horse, and a child brought home against all odds. Flashbulbs popped as local reporters arrived, capturing the reunion. Sarah found herself answering questions, her words coming in short, overwhelmed bursts. "We just followed the clues. Storm did most of the work. I just trusted him. And Lily was brave, braver than anyone I've ever seen." Paramedics arrived, checking Lily over, wrapping her in warm blankets and making sure she was unharmed. Sarah watched from a distance, exhaustion settling deep into her bones. She caught sight of the kidnapper, now cuffed and surrounded by deputies, his head bowed in defeat. For a brief moment, Sarah felt only pity. He would answer for what he'd done. But tonight was not about him. Tonight was about hope, about love, about a community refusing to give up on one of its own. The celebration stretched long into the early hours. Neighbors brought coffee and food. Strangers hugged each other in relief. And Storm, normally wary of crowds, stood serenely as people came to thank him. Lily refused to leave his side, and Sarah let her stay, knowing the bond between child and horse was now unbreakable. At last, as dawn began to break over Sage Creek, Sarah made her way home. The exhaustion hit her all at once, but as she looked back over her shoulder, she saw Lily still hugging Storm's neck, the horse calm and gentle, standing watch as the world finally began to feel safe again. Sarah smiled, a quiet peace settling in her heart. They had all come together, all risked something for the sake of one small life. And tonight, against all odds, that had been enough. Sunrise crept gently over Sage Creek, its golden rays dispelling the shadows of the long, harrowing night. The entire town awoke with a different kind of energy, a mixture of exhaustion and gratitude that settled in bones and hearts alike. Word had already spread far beyond the county lines. Lily's safe return had become the talk of every kitchen table and shop counter, while photos of Storm standing guard beside her filled every phone and newspaper in the region. The story was quickly becoming legend. At the police station, the mood was a strange blend of celebration and quiet awe. Officers who'd spent the night scouring the woods now crowded around Sarah, patting her on the back, telling her she was a hero. But Sarah only shook her head, her thoughts already drifting back to the woods and the moments when everything might have fallen apart. She'd spent hours replaying it all. Storm's sudden choices, Lily's fragile hope, the terrifying calm before the rescue. She felt pride, yes, but also a deep humility. She knew she had not acted alone. By late morning, the local news crews had arrived, microphones and cameras swarming outside the police station. "Officer Jennings, how did you know where to look?" "How did Storm help you track them?" Sarah answered as best she could, always circling back to the truth. "Honestly, I trusted Storm. Sometimes animals pick up on things we don't." He led me where I needed to go. I just had to listen. The sheriff called a special community meeting that afternoon at the town hall. Families filled every pew, standing room only at the back. Lily sat near the front, flanked by her parents and clutching a toy horse someone had given her that morning. Sarah stood by the side, hands clasped, trying to keep her nerves in check as Sheriff Grant took the podium. He started by recounting the facts: the missing child, the relentless search, the crucial clues. But then he paused, looking out over the gathered faces, and his voice took on a new weight. "We got lucky," he said. But luck alone wasn't what brought Lily home. It was teamwork, it was community, and it was a horse with a nose for trouble. He gestured for Sarah to join him, and the crowd erupted in applause as she made her way to the front. Sarah glanced at Lily, who smiled up at her, shy but proud. Sheriff Grant clapped her on the back. "Sarah Jennings, you've shown us what courage looks like. And Storm, well, he's reminded us that heroes come in all shapes and sizes." Sarah took a breath and addressed the room. "Last night, when everything felt impossible, I had to trust Storm and trust myself. But more than that, I had to trust all of you. The search parties, the families who kept the lights on, the people who didn't give up hope. We couldn't have done it alone. And what made the difference wasn't just the badge or the training. It was partnership. It was listening. It was believing in something bigger than ourselves." She looked down at Lily, then back at the townspeople. "We have a lot to learn from Storm and from each other. I hope this makes us stronger, more prepared, and more united." The sheriff took the microphone again. "I want to make an announcement," he said, his eyes sweeping the crowd. "Starting today, the Sage Creek Police Department is forming a new initiative, one that includes more training and resources for search and rescue teams that partner with horses. Storm has shown us that sometimes the best tools aren't the ones you can buy, but the ones you build trust with." A buzz of excitement filled the room. Parents nodded, volunteers murmured to each other. Even the old-timers, who'd once scoffed at the idea of horses in police work, seemed to reconsider. After the meeting, reporters crowded around Sarah, asking for one last interview. She saw Lily at the edge of the crowd, holding her toy horse and waving shyly. Sarah smiled, kneeling down to meet the girl's eyes. "How are you feeling, Lily?" Lily nodded, a little stronger now. "I'm okay. Storm's my best friend. Can I visit him?" "Anytime you want," Sarah replied. "I think he'd like that. You're both pretty brave." Lily's parents thanked Sarah again, their voices choked with emotion. "You saved our little girl. We'll never forget it." Sarah shook her head. "We all did it together. Don't forget that." Outside the town hall, Storm waited by the fence, surrounded by a new generation of admirers. Children petting his muzzle, adults snapping photos, even the mayor offering him a carrot. He stood calmly through it all, regal and patient, as if he'd been waiting for this moment his whole life. Later that evening, as the town settled down and the sun set behind the hills, Sarah walked to the stable. She found Storm in his stall, contentedly munching hay. She leaned against the wooden gate, letting the events of the past 24 hours wash over her. She stroked Storm's nose and whispered, "Thank you. I couldn't have done it without you." Storm nuzzled her shoulder in response, his breath warm and reassuring. The story of Lily's rescue became more than just news. It was a lesson for Sage Creek. Families talked about trust and teamwork at their dinner tables. Kids played search and rescue in the parks, some dreaming of becoming police officers or horse trainers. The town felt different, more connected, more aware of what it meant to watch over one another. And for Sarah, recognition was never the goal. What mattered was that a child was home, a family was whole, and a community had remembered its own strength. She knew the true lesson had just begun, a lesson about listening, about partnership, and about hope. A week had passed since the night that forever changed Sage Creek. Life was settling back into its gentle routines. School buses rumbling down Main Street, the bakery's sweet scent drifting on the morning breeze, the bell above the hardware store tinkling with each customer's arrival. Yet something was different now, woven into the fabric of the town like a bright new thread. People greeted each other with a little more warmth, a little more patience. They held their children a bit tighter at night. Sarah Jennings felt the change most of all. In the days after the rescue, she became a reluctant celebrity. Her name and Storm's face appeared on local news and in online stories that traveled far beyond Sage Creek. Letters arrived at the police station, some from parents whose own children had gone missing, thanking Sarah and Storm for giving them hope. Still, Sarah never felt like a hero. She remembered her fear, her doubt, and the uncertain moments in the woods. But she also remembered what came after, the relief, the reunion, and the way the whole town had come together. Now, standing on the polished wooden stage in the elementary school gym, Sarah gazed out at a sea of young faces. The principal had invited her to speak at an assembly, saying the students were still buzzing with excitement about Lily's return. Parents filled the back row, some with hands clasped, others wiping away tears as their children pointed eagerly at Sarah and whispered about Storm, who stood just outside the doors, poking his head in from time to time and making the kids giggle. Sarah took a breath and began. A lot of people have been calling me brave this week, but the truth is, bravery isn't about never being afraid. It's about doing what's right, even when you're scared. It's about not giving up on hope, even when things seem impossible. She paused, letting her words settle. And sometimes, being brave means trusting a friend, even if that friend has 4 legs and can't talk. The students leaned forward, captivated. Sarah continued, Storm and I worked together. He showed me how to listen, not just with my ears, but with my heart. And Lily, she was brave too. She didn't give up, even when she was scared. She kept hoping someone would find her. A small hand shot up near the front. Did Storm really save you both? The boy asked. Sarah smiled. He did. I couldn't have done it alone. He's a reminder that sometimes help comes from places you don't expect. Everyone in this room is capable of being a hero for someone, by being kind, by helping, by not giving up. After her talk, Sarah led the students outside where Storm waited, ears flicking, enjoying the attention. Lily was there, beaming, a little stronger every day. She had started visiting Storm at the stables each afternoon, learning how to brush him, feed him, and lead him around the paddock. Her laughter rang out, bright and free, as she told her classmates, Storm's my best friend now, and when I grow up, I want to help rescue people too. The impact of that night rippled outward. Sheriff Grant's new initiative took shape quickly. Officers began attending training sessions on search and rescue horsemanship. Volunteers came forward, eager to learn. Other towns reached out to Sage Creek, asking for advice and offering to partner on future efforts. The town's only stable was suddenly a hub of activity, filled with the joyful noise of children and the steady, calming presence of horses. Sarah watched it all with quiet pride. She thought often of the lesson that had carried her through the darkest hours. Heroism wasn't just about big, dramatic acts. It was about persistence, teamwork, and faith in those around you. She found herself more attuned to small moments. A neighbor helping another fix a fence, kids organizing a food drive, families sharing stories over dinner. Storm became a local legend, but fame never changed him. He still greeted Sarah each morning with a soft nicker and stood quietly as children hugged his neck or fed him apples. Some evenings, Sarah would find Lily sitting on the fence telling Storm about her day, her dreams, her hopes for the future. Those moments reminded Sarah why she had chosen this path. Not for medals or recognition, but for the chance to make a difference, no matter how small. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Sarah stood in the quiet barn with Lily and Storm. The world was peaceful, golden light filtering through dust motes, the sweet smell of hay in the air. Lily looked up, her eyes serious. "Sarah, will you always be here to help people?" Sarah knelt beside her. "I'll always try. But you know what? I think you and everyone else here can help people too. Sometimes all it takes is refusing to give up and believing in each other." Lily hugged her tight, then turned to Storm. "I believe in you, Storm." Sarah watched the two of them, girl and horse, connected by something that couldn't be spoken, only felt. That, she realized, was the true legacy of what had happened. The courage to trust, the strength to keep going, and the hope that carried them all home. In the weeks and months that followed, Sage Creek remembered the lesson. When problems came, people didn't wait for someone else to fix them. They stepped up together. Children learned to look out for one another. Neighbors knocked on each other's doors more often. The story of Lily's rescue became a touchstone for what the town could be. Not perfect, but resilient and full of heart. As for Sarah, she kept working, kept listening, kept learning from Storm, from Lily, from her friends and neighbors. She knew every town had its storms, every family its long nights. But she also knew that with enough trust, teamwork, and hope, even the darkest moments could give way to dawn, because true heroism, she understood now, isn't about glory. It's about ordinary people, and sometimes extraordinary animals, refusing to give up on each other, no matter how hard the journey home.